Thanks, guys. Thanks, Phil and Matthew, to be joining here today. I think today we're going to talk about Vault Bridge and Cork, and also about the nice announcement that you did a few days ago, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe if you can start, Matthew or Phil, whoever wants to start, just like introducing yourself, and maybe we can start talking about like what Vault Bridge is, what Cork Bridge, and then we're going to talk about like how you are solving your some particular issues.
Cool. Yeah, Matthew, nice to join you guys. Thanks for having us. Been in crypto for about 5 years now, and just exclusively in DeFi for like the past 3. So been thinking a lot about some of this stuff over time, and good to see people like Phil starting to build more kind of like things to bring in other market participants that might be a little bit more hesitant given certain risk parameters for their funds. Yeah, I guess nice to meet you guys. I'm running a lot of the BD stuff over at Katana.
Hey, I'm Phil. I'm the co-founder of Cork. Been in crypto now for over a decade. This is my 3rd crypto startup, and really focused on how can we scale crypto adoption and institutional usage and make crypto a better user experience across the board, and have really different kinds of programmable layers. And we can get into sort of what Cork is and how it's built as we go on today.
Very cool. So Matthew, why don't you start talking about what is Katana that you launched, and that is kind of like using heavily Vault Bridge for the specific use case on Katana. What does it bring to Katana users, but also that the risk that could be inherent from that model? And then after we can talk about how Phil and the Cork protocol is solving those potential issues.
Sounds good. Yeah, so Katana, you can think of it as a purpose-built opinionated DeFi chain, or you can think of it as like a DeFi super app, which will be becoming more apparent. We just launched V1 of our application yesterday, if anyone wants to check it out. And so part of the Katana thesis was kind of concentrating yield and liquidity amongst like one core protocol per primitive. And so on the money market side, we're working closely with Morpho. One of the reasons Morpho is excited about Katana, and the reason that we're kind of talking about this today, is through this concept of Vault Bridge, which is kind of an idea that's been around in the Polygon circles for a little bit now. But basically this idea of kind of turning all the bridged assets into yield bearing. You've seen flavors of this with Blast and other people in the past, but one thing that they did was kind of just give the yield to everybody. What Katana does is basically says like not all users are equal and they shouldn't be treated as such. So we take this USDC, USDT, ETH, and Bitcoin that's bridged from Ethereum mainnet to Katana. We lend that out on Morpho on the Ethereum instance, and then all the yield goes straight to Katana. Now, what Katana does with that is kind of go into this like opinionated way that we're talking about, is we redirect all that yield into the DeFi protocols themselves. So again, if we don't really care about like idle and raw TVL, we care about productive capital. And so all of that yield goes to users that are driving activity on the network. So if I'm coming into Morpho on Katana, I'm earning the L2 supply rate. And then because of this Vault Bridge mechanism, I'm also earning a portion of the L1 supply rate. So the idea is like over the long term, when you think about the DeFi MOA thesis and all this other stuff, I'm a fintech user. I come to a new chain. I don't really care about that governance token, but I really do care about an extra 2 or 3% on stablecoin yield. And that's what kind of Vault Bridge enables. So I can kind of like pause there. I was rambling for a little bit, but.
Yeah, just to rephrase and summarize, right now there's approximately like 600 mil on Katana, perhaps 400 mil in USDC, USDT that are earning yield on Ethereum using Morpho vaults, and that yield is taken back to Katana and used to incentivize use case on Katana. So users on Katana will get the basic yield, the native one, plus that additional yield that will create a very, very nice flywheel, which is great for users. But that means that if you want to bridge back to Ethereum, if you can't withdraw from the Morpho vault on the Ethereum side of things, maybe you won't be able to withdraw all your liquidity. And this is maybe like a good transition to the Cork mechanism and Cork protocol, how it fits into that. Please, Phil, if you can introduce how Cork works.
Sure. So Cork is building a tokenized risk protocol. And so you can think about that as building a programmable risk layer for on-chain assets, such as vault tokens, RWAs, yield-bearing stablecoins, or really any assets on-chain. Cork's risk infrastructure primitive enables asset managers, issuers, protocols, bridges, et cetera, to spin up custom swap markets that enhance redemption liquidity, risk transparency, and market confidence in on-chain assets. And so ultimately, Cork is building this risk infrastructure that's needed to bring institutional capital and more confidence into on-chain credit markets. And so to get into the specifics, the way the markets are structured, every market is isolated, and it's going to be defined by a specific collateral asset and a specific reference asset. So in the case of Vault Bridge, it's actually, there's a stablecoin as the collateral asset, and then there is the reference asset is actually the vault token, the BBUSDC vault token sitting on Ethereum mainnet that's the bridge is deploying into. And when the collateral asset is deposited into the Cork pool, what happens is it creates two tokens, a principal token and a swap token. And the swap token has the functionality of allowing the user to take that reference asset, so the vault token, plus the swap token, send it to the Cork pool, and pull out that stablecoin that is the collateral asset that's sitting there. And so what that does is it creates an instant liquidity buffer that can be accessed atomically at any time at a predefined exchange rate. And so you always know that you have, if you have the swap token, you have access to a captive pool of capital that can be used instantly. And so in the Vault Bridge use case, as you said, like if there's a scenario where during normal times, you don't have an issue, right? The Morpho vault has plenty of liquidity and it can be withdrawn as users come in. But if you have a stress test scenario where you have a lot of withdrawals at the same time as liquidity is drying up, you could run into an issue. And so this creates a insurance buffer where this buffer is able to be used where at any time those vault tokens can be redeemed and you can get to a stablecoin guaranteed.
Very nice. I think maybe Matthew, why are you partnering with Cork? I know Vault Bridge, we've been talking about Katana that is using Vault Bridge, but I know that Vault Bridge is a general solution that other L2s can use. And also, I don't know, L2s built by, that will be used by institutions and or fintechs, etc. Why doing this partnership? And do you think that institutions are demanding more of those insurance, on-chain insurance, to come on chain?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that institutional adoption is really picking up, even though the market and the token prices aren't showing that at the moment. And then I guess I would also say you never really know with crypto. Like you see things like 1010, and I'm an institution like wondering whether to get in. I think solutions like Cork can kind of help get them over the line. And so like Katana's actually been able to handle tons of withdrawals in a very short period. I think like someone was unwinding like a $60 or $80 million trade and everything was executed and was completely normal. Nothing at risk at that point. But we also know that we're approaching TGE in Q1. And so want to kind of be able to be a little bit forward looking and protect users and really just kind of like the asset duration kind of like mismatch potential here. And so just want to kind of have that on-demand liquidity for like the stable coin is what we're doing for this. And yeah, again, like I think this like helps show like the market and especially other people that in institutions that are in the pipeline that want to use Vault Bridge and the Agglayer, that this is another solution for them. And we've been talking to Cork for like months and like the team a lot and like what they're building, transparent on chain and like very clear payouts, whereas some of the other insurance providers in the past, I'm not super deep in it, but my knowledge is that like hasn't been always super clear. So.
All right, Phil, what do you think is the largest risk that institutions or want to be covered? So here we have an example of with Katana and Vault Bridge about liquidity risk, but is there other thing that you think they will be asking for?
Yeah, I think as institutions come on chain, there's a lot of different risk factors that they're asking for, and different solutions are needed to cover different risks, right? So usually the number one risk that people start thinking about is smart contract risk. And smart contract risk is pretty complicated. And also the payouts for that are different, and the premiums for that are different than when you think about more liquidity, duration, and credit risk. And so smart contract risk probably just stays in the realm of traditional insurance providers, where you make a claim, you buy insurance, you make a claim, and that claim is paid out at some time after the fact, after it's looked into, because you can have different effects of the smart contract failing. They're not always felt immediately and instantly. And so it's probably something that stays in the traditional insurance product realm. But things like credit insurance or credit defaults and duration and liquidity risks are things that you actually want to have payouts on immediately. And so one of the really good examples of this is that we've created on chain a lot of new products that, like RWAs, like vault tokens, where you don't necessarily have instantaneous redemptions. And the challenge with that is that it often breaks composability inside of DeFi, because you need that instant redemption and ability to unwind transactions, especially if you're using them for bridges or using them as part of like a looping trade and you want leverage against it. And so what Cork introduces is a primitive that allows you to deal with that risk, the risk where you need instant payouts and the atomic ability to go from one asset to another for assets that may not have that ability. And so, in a Morpho vault token, usually you have the ability to exit instantaneously unless there is a liquidity crunch, and there may not be the ability to exit instantaneously, and thus this provides that instantaneous ability. Same thing for an RWA, where you have maybe a 90-day redemption cycle, and you actually want to be able to exit it early. And you can basically buy a swap token upfront, pay a premium, and then have a known exchange rate at which you can get out of that asset at any time.
Yeah, I can pile on that. The RWA stuff and that use case is going to be huge in 2026 and 2027. I think Fascinara, and you've seen some of these RWAs with the redemption time has been tough. If you're like trying to get 5x leverage and you're looping 30 times and it's a monthly redemption, that takes you 30 months to get out of the trade. And so I think Cork is still trying to solve. Other people are trying to solve. I think it'll be a pretty competitive space going forward in terms of who can really make this RWA looping happen. And I think there's like a big pot around that. But I think one of the things it comes down to is obviously this on-demand liquidity and people willing to take over the kind of the duration risk in exchange for the liquidity. So,
yeah. And we've seen a bunch of other solutions be tried where it's a shared liquidity pool, right? And that, again, works totally fine in normal environments. But when you stress test it where everyone is going to do redemption at the same time, that shared liquidity doesn't actually solve the problem for everyone. And actually can create some pretty bad risk management decisions to be made across the board. And I think we've seen that in the last couple months, where some of these products that people thought they would have liquidity on or be able to exit, they just absolutely were not able to exit. And had some bad liquidations that take place.
Can you go into the details of the partnership? Is it users that need to subscribe to this, or is it whenever someone's bridges the asset and you subscribe automatically? Like, can you go into the detailed specificities of how it is built and how you're going to expand that as well?
Yeah, so the way that we've started this is it's actually built directly as almost like a B2B setup, right? So the users don't have to subscribe. It's done directly with Agglayer, where Agglayer is managing the Vault Bridge withdrawals, and they have access to the swap tokens from the Cork Pool, and thus they can manage whenever they need to use that. And so as long as there's liquidity in the vault that they can tap into, that's obviously their first way they're going to tap into it. And then if there isn't liquidity, they can sort of direct the redemptions coming across the bridge to the swap tokens. And then as time goes on, we can expand that to that being atomically done directly at the contract level and covering more assets.
Yeah, so basically there's 100 million deposits in the vault. There's only 20 that's instantly available. And obviously for users, what's like the scariest thing is we've seen so many kind of bridge exploits in like the past. Like, I want my money now. Like, I need an answer for it now. And so I think this helps give in terms of like liquidity crunches, like more kind of confidence for users that they get their funds out faster, and practically helps us do that too.
Yeah, Matthew, you mentioned that if the bridge gets hacked, etc. There's multiple risk of bridges. Could you dive into those? And is there like some that you're going to try to fix, like either on the Cork side or on the Agglayer/Katana side? Um,
Honestly, like I'm gonna kick that over to Phil. I'm not like the best person to verbalize it. I understand it, I can read it, but it's more just like kind of speaking it out loud is not my expertise, so I'll defer.
Yeah, I mean, the things that look so there's a lot of risks in bridges in general, right? Where you can have bridge hacks, you can have bridge lack of redemptions, you can have a bunch of different things. In this setup, the goal of what we're building is to create a insurance around the liquidity of the bridge. And so as long as the vault tokens are continuing to be held, and the vault tokens can always be redeemed. And so no matter what happens inside of the vault, you have this redemption pathway where you can do it. So it covers, anything that happens to the vault as long as you have that vault token. And I think as this expands to other chains beyond Katana and more general usage of Vault Bridge, because this is a pretty innovative concept where historically what you've seen is bridge assets just sitting idle, and you see that there are billions and tens of billions of dollars of this across the ecosystem where you're taking this unproductive capital, and the only person who's earning any money on that is actually Circle, and the users are not, the ecosystems are not. And so I think this is a way to take that and turn it on its head and say that the bridge assets can actually be productive. You can actually get a level of utility from them and yield that you can then share with different users in whatever opinionated way you want to do so, and do so in a way where you're not compromising liquidity. And so you still have access to the right amount of liquidity at the right time for users who need to exit positions.
Right.
Yeah,
so
and I also would say
I'm sorry. Go
like
ahead.
you have yeah, no worries. Maybe there's some latency there. Yeah, I think it's like at least for Katana, it's a nice like mix. So like we have Agora too, which is backed by T-bills, and that's all well and great. But like now T-bill rates are like falling, and as like the market demand for leverage kind of picks up, it's nice to have something like kind of like backed by Morpho, where it also is increasing the yield with like the leverage and the demand in like the ecosystem. And so it's a nice kind of mixture of like there's an off-chain yield with treasury bills, and then there's like some on-chain yield with kind of this Vault Bridge USDC.
Yeah, it feels like with Cork plus Vault Bridge, you have the best of both worlds, where all idle liquidity can still be put at work and earn yield on, like Morpho, for instance, to yield that can be passed back to users, depositors, and at the same time you get that insurance that provide that instant liquidity buffer, so that users are appeased at least to move to a layer 2. Without this insurance, they would not be maybe 100% sure that in case of a stressful event, they would get back all the liquidity. So you have this like a two product that combined together provide the best of both worlds. How do you imagine maybe the future of Cork and Vault Bridge together, but also on like what's the path forward for both protocols?
Yeah, I think together that we're just making DeFi more resilient, and taking innovative use cases, proving them out, and creating ways to make them safer and package that together for users to have an overall better user experience. I think from the Vault Bridge side, the idea is that you never have a scenario where a user is trying to exit the bridge and the liquidity is not there for them to do so, and that their redemption has to be delayed by any amount. And so I think that over time can scale, and that as Katana, Vault Bridge, as more people use Vault Bridge for their own chains, as Katana grows, right, you'll see that growing as well, so that you continue to have that liquidity buffer and making sure that users feel confident that they can get out. In terms of where things go from Cork, I think we touched on it a little bit. I think the RWA use case is going to be a huge one. I also think that you'll see similar use cases as vaults grow. And you have more and more assets in these async vaults, and people potentially wanting to try and loop those async vaults as well. You'll have the same market dynamics that Cork can create, where it gives you the ability to functionally price and eliminate that duration risk for any asset.
Yeah, and I guess I would also say so once the Vault Bridge announcement with like Morpho went out, I think around time we announced Katana, we got like inbound from like several chains. Some of them people definitely know, and some of them are like smaller. But even for the smaller ones, if you have like 10 USDC on your chain, all of a sudden you can pay conduit, RPC providers, all this other stuff. You can kind of not only subsidize like user yield, but you can also subsidize your own infrastructure costs too. And so there's different things you can do with it. Like at Katana, we're redirecting everything back to users, but you can kind of customize it as you see fit. I'd also say like it's not like one size fits all. Vault Bridge isn't for like everybody in every chain. Like there are definitely circumstances like on the payment side, for example, where you just want native USDC. Or for your gaming chain, like do you really need to kind of like add this Vault Bridge element into it? But like at Katana, like we just are hyper focused on risk adjusted yield. So yes, like Vault Bridge adds like some layer of risk, but then you also think about the extra return you're getting. You can underwrite that, and now if you can also buy insurance on top of that, you can get something that like works for you.
Right. Very nice. We just have a few minutes before we wrap up. Anything that you'd like to mention?
I mean, one of the reasons why I'm super excited about both Cork and Vault Bridge and working together on this is that we're scaling non-speculative use cases and showing what the power of DeFi can be and what the power of like the money Legos can be when you add in Morpho, an L2, an L1, Cork, and take all of this together to create something that is clearly greater than the sum of its parts and allows for users to do things that have real world application and real world use cases that users and institutions want.
Yeah, I guess not to speak for Morpho, but if you want a Morpho instance on your chain, one of the best ways to do that is to implement Vault Bridge. And yeah, I like recommend checking out Morpho and Cork. I think Cork is definitely a little intimidating to learn about at first, but once you kind of get farther into it, it reminds you more of some of the innovation that kind of happened back in like the 2020, 2021 cycle. And then also recommend obviously checking out Morpho V2 coming, and then Katana if you have the chance to.
Yeah, I'd recommend also checking Vault Bridge documentation. I am doing that for you, Matthew, because I don't think you mentioned that. It's great technology. Also diving into the Agglayer. I think both of you guys are kind of building the building blocks to onboard faster and easier, like the institution that are all coming on chain. It's not if, it's a when, and to speed up the whole process, we need to build the relevant tools, and that will make reassure them and ease their transition. Cool. I guess we only have 2 minutes left, so I would say perhaps we can. I don't know, Matthew. So the other one, if you want to join back, or we can ask a last question, and then maybe to Cork on why. I don't know. One question we can ask for you, Phil, is why Cork would be like specific to. Maybe it's not the right question, but why would classic insurance will protect for smart contract hack and not on-chain, fully on-chain solutions like Cork?
Right.
I think it's an interesting topic.
Yeah, so the way that Cork is built is it's designed, especially around Cork V1, right? It's designed to do instantaneous payouts for where you're taking one asset and converting it to another asset. And so if you have an asset where inside of that asset there was so let's say, God forbid you had a vault token and there was a smart contract exploit inside of that vault, you can still run the swap for that vault token. But it doesn't cover things where you're looking at, there was a smart contract exploit, for example, on a balancer pool. I have XYZ, exposure to that, and I need someone to now figure out how much I'm actually owed, right? It's not a one-to-one payout of, your full coverage. You maybe don't need to buy that full spec or pay for that full spectrum of coverage because of the way that the smart contracts are set up. And it also makes generally a little bit more sense to have it done in a way where someone can actually look at it and make a determination and say, yes, this was an exploit that took place, as opposed to something that's instantaneous where it's just rules-based via smart contracts. And so that's where I think the difference between a traditional insurance policy that needs more information and more time and not something that's judged by programmatic rules versus something that can be judged by programmatic rules.
Yeah. So basically everything that is kind of binary, like either it happens or not, and then that can be like check on chain automatically and instantly, is suitable for to be covered via Cork protocol. While everything that needs judgment and maybe some step back, then it's better to resolve that through like classic insurance rails.
Exactly, and that's sort of like what Nexus Mutual is very good at.
Phil, I have a quick question for you as we like wrap up. Like, how do you kind of see the insurance like market growing? Like, I was in one of these offices like 2 weeks ago, and I think that they said there's only 4 providers in crypto insurance, which I thought was like pretty small. And then they were also explaining to me that like it really only makes sense economically if you're doing it like hundreds of millions almost insuring. Like anything kind of like smaller than 100 million is just like too expensive and not going to kind of get over the line. So what are kind of your views on that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think the insurance market in crypto is about to explode. Whether that's smart contract insurance or economic insurance like duration risk, credit risk, liquidity risk, et cetera. Because I think institutions that come on chain are going to want guarantees. And I think it's going to be more of an institutional play. I think retail using insurance products, whether it's Cork or Nexus Mutual or traditional off-chain insurance providers, is going to be less prevalent because I think it's going to be packaged into products that are delivered directly to users in the same way that with Vault Bridge, we've packaged this together where the user doesn't have to think about it, right? It's done at the protocol level. You're going to see that as well with insurance. I think you've seen a couple examples of that in the last few days or in the last few weeks where people have started talking about bringing insurance as part of apps, right? And creating an insurance profile. And I think the real question is going to be, what does that insurance actually cover? What does that give you as a user? And do you actually get the coverage you think you're getting out of a headline?
So long Cork, basically, and you'll be good.
Exactly.
All right. Cool. Thanks, everyone. I guess we can wrap up. Maybe we can say hi. I don't know, for the video at least. Thanks, guys, for joining the call today. It was very, very cool, and we could get into the details of the partnership. So it's great, and thanks again.